This is the first in a series of videos designed to teach you the basics of HTML5. In this first video, I'll be covering some of the basics that you need to get started. HTML is a markup language used to make web pages, and HTML5 is version 5 of that language. The older HTML version 4.01 and XHTML version 1.0 has been used for many years, but HTML5 seeks to be an improvement over these older versions. For example, in order to support multimedia, HTML5 has new elements for audio and video, and I'll be showing you how to use these new elements in one of the other videos in this series. So what do you need to start writing HTML5? You need a browser to test your HTML code, and I'll be using Google Chrome, and you need a text editor. I'll be using Notepad++. I found my copy at notepad-++.org. I'll start by defining a few terms that you will be hearing me use frequently. The terms are tag, element, and attribute. Let's start by looking at a tag. This is a title tag. It has a tag name that is surrounded by angle brackets. Next, let's look at an element. An element has a start tag, an end tag, and content in between. Sometimes you may hear start and end tags called opening and closing tags. Notice that the end tag has the same name as the start tag, except that the end tag begins with a / before the name. So this whole thing, including the start tag, the content, and the end tag, is called an element. In this case, it's a title element. Most of the elements in HTML5 are made up of start and end tags with content in between. However, there are some elements that only have a start tag. Here's an example. This is a BR element, which represents a line break. It doesn't have an end tag or any content. It only has a start tag. The last term that I want to define is the attribute. An attribute allows us to add additional information to an element. For example, here's an H1 heading element. An attribute, if present, is located in the start tag after the tag name. This is the attribute. The first part of the attribute is the attribute name. The attribute name is followed by an equal sign. Then the equal sign is followed by the value of the attribute enclosed in quotation marks. HTML5 actually allows some other variations for specifying attributes, but this is the variation that I typically use. Now that we've covered the definitions, let's look at a sample HTML5 document. You'll notice that I've indented some of the lines. I did this by just adding spaces at the beginning of some of the lines. This is not required, and I only do it to make the HTML code easier to read. It doesn't change how the web page will be displayed in the browser. What I've done is to align the start and end tags for the elements that span more than one line. Now to view this in a browser, we need to start by saving the file. So from the File menu, select Save As. Then give your file a name and use HTML as the extension. I'll just call this first.html. Now to view your document in a browser, locate it using Windows Explorer or something equivalent, and then double-click on it to open it up in your default browser. Or, if you're using Notepad++, you can go to the Run menu and select a browser from the list. For this to work, however, you will need to already have the browser installed. This is what our basic HTML5 document looks like in a browser. Now let's go back to the HTML code and examine it. The HTML5 document starts with a doctype, and this is what a doctype looks like when using HTML5. The doctype is a preamble for our HTML5 document. After the doctype is the HTML element. This is the start tag for the HTML element. This is the end tag, and this is the content. The HTML element is the root element of the HTML document, and the rest of the HTML code is located between the start and end HTML tags. You might notice that the start HTML tag contains a language attribute. I have the value set to EN, which means English. It's encouraged to use this attribute because it can be helpful for multiple reasons, one of which is that it can help speech synthesis tools with pronunciations. Inside the HTML element, there are two sections, the head section and the body section. The head element defines the head section, which contains information about the HTML document. The meta element can be used to specify various kinds of information. This element only has a start tag, and so an attribute is used to specify its information. In this case, we're specifying the character encoding. UTF-8 is a very common value to use here. The title element is used to specify the title for the document. The content in between the start and end tags is what is displayed on the Browser tab. So our title is Example Document. Over here on the Browser tab, you can see that it also says Example Document. Now let's look at the body section of the HTML5 code. The body element defines the body section, which contains the main content of the HTML document. This is where we put the information that will be displayed in the browser. In this example, we have a single P element in our body section. P elements are used to represent a paragraph. This text in between the start and end tags is displayed in the browser. Now let's add another P element. So I'll type the start tag, then some text, then the end tag. Now I'm going to save the file. In Notepad++, I can do this by pressing this button. Then in the browser, since we already have the page displayed, all we need to do is to refresh the page and we will be able to see the new updates. And here is the new line of text that we added. Well, that concludes this video. You can find the code used in this video at littlewebhut.com. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe and leave a comment.